Good morning, it's Joyful Hermit. Forgot to ice my neck enough yesterday. Anyway, I woke up and was just pondering, my sharing, and there was much more that occurred in that time period at that parish. I didn't go into detail about how the people reacted to me or some of the overt ways that they shunned me. And also, there was one thing that was particularly painful. But God unfolds these events. And it was that I'm very close with Padre Pio, as many of you are, and he wanted to have a prayer group there. At one point, I saw him in the church when I was in there praying. He was off to the left. And a woman told me a couple of days later that her little grandson had seen a man and described him in that chapel that was sort of behind the tabernacle, but tabernacle on both sides, in the church and in the chapel. And it didn't surprise me at all that he was around there for a while because of the situation with this young man, this young priest who had troubles. So anyway, I kept telling the young priest that there needed to be a Padre Pio prayer group there. And finally, he kept putting it off and putting it off, and finally he agreed because it had to go through a priest and be established with the American effort out on the East Coast and then through San Giovanni Rotondo. So my mother had died. I spent at least $1,000 on materials, books, getting everything prepared, even matting and framing the certificate when it came. And I had written out letters to all the parishes in the area, about 65 different ones, and priests, asking them to put it in their bulletin when the first meeting would be, and set up. And another woman, I had her helping. I always do things with a broader base, so we had like a core group. And for it to be built, I always build things on a pyramid type with a strong bottom base. And I keep myself out of it for the most part, other than to develop it. I have a doctorate in education administration, and my emphasis was organizational leadership. And I was also in a school district in Southern California, an assistant projects director, so I know about program development. And the one who develops ought to implement it, or at least get it off the ground, which was my intention, and then to turn it over to others. And so there had been about a 6 to 8 month build up to this. I'd gotten Padre Pio videos and different things to show in their Bible study class between Masses, and developed a sort of a groundswell of support as best I could, but reached out to other parishes, knowing that there was resistance in this one parish. The devil was very active in that parish, even before this young priest came along. There had been a backlog of unfortunate situations that would occur there. So it came time then. I developed notebooks for people, like 30 or 33 of them, purchased books for everyone to have, Padre Pio books, and got Padre Pio scapulars, and tried to really do it upright, and even located a relic of Padre Pio from another community, and I drove and got that, borrowed it, and then the priest told me I would not be allowed to do anything with it anymore. So we had our first meeting, and he didn't bring the relic, but I did step in and remind, please, could you bring the relic to bless everyone with? So he went back and got it. I was not allowed to speak or to get it off the ground. So when I realized he was not going to let me have anything to do with it, the implementation, I asked this other woman to please, and she really didn't want to, didn't feel comfortable with that, but she agreed because I said otherwise it's going to fail. It's going to fail. And he didn't allow me. So we had, I'd say 40 people come to the first meeting, which was great, mostly from other parishes. And then I wasn't allowed to do anything, which was crushing, because I knew that it had to be brought along and at least developed to a certain level before I could let go of helping it get established. And I realized this other woman wasn't, you have to have your heart in it. And so anyway, the next meeting, maybe there were 10, after that 3, and then I was out of the parish and it fell apart, which was a shame because it could have been a great thing for the diocese. But that type of thing has happened repeatedly to me, and a lot of it is the devil working against good works, but also I have to see it in another light, especially even now, in sort of the culmination of any of my active life or even being present, of now being hidden away other than through this, my little window to the world. I want to share one other thing that, there were many blessings that came to me in that parish. That's one thing to always know, that no matter how persecuted on one level and misunderstood, Jesus comes through. His real presence, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, builds you up in other ways. And while the consolations are few and far between, it's intended that way, to strengthen us. And to remember the consolations when you have an experience, as many of you have had experiences, of the numinous, of the mystery of God, the beauty that transcends all. It's as if you can recall it and it has happened just then. It's very vivid, very clear, very lucid, and never leaves you. And that's also a gift from God so that we will never forget. And when we are in our weakest moments, we can call upon that beautiful memory of that holy experience. So I also, there was a young woman in this parish who, I won't go into it all, but things weren't quite right. And I tried to talk with her once. I had a message from Mary for her, and she didn't like it. But it had to do with her presentation and some of how she was behaving, which was very inappropriate. But God bless her. Anyway, she was very, very caught up with Medjugorje. And, but her actions were contradictory. As if you observe all of that phenomenon, there is much to be questioned. But I didn't know, and I thought I need to find out from His real presence once and for all about Medjugorje. Am I seeing it wrongly? Am I somehow blinded, or not seeing through it clearly, and is the devil twisting my reality on it? So I prayed in that chapel one night. Tell me about Medjugorje, and should I follow that? Is it true? Is it actual? Is it right? Because all I had seen thus far, for a few years of it, were gross inconsistencies. Yes, there was good, but granted, we would have much good if 10,000 people met at Cathedral Square to pray the Rosary. So, but there were many, many gross irregularities and red flags. But anyway, I prayed and prayed because I was torn, not knowing. And Mary appeared to me, and she said very simply, "Follow me in Fatima." And I realized that that was the answer. Mary is so beautiful she wouldn't say no to the one. She just said what was right, what she wanted me to follow. And in that answer, I knew she was giving the proper direction without a word about the other. So I started reading about Fatima. I memorized the angels' prayers, and I still to this day I have them on my counter. And after my mother passed away that fall, after I had this vision of Mary, I had told this one daughter about it, and she says, "Oh, you should go, you should go." And about 10 days after my mother's passing, I had some of the money was transferred to my sisters and myself, and I, for the first time, had I think it was about $1,500 or $1,600 that I would need to go. I found a group going from out east, and I went. It was about a 4 or 5 day. Of course, I was ill most of the time I was there because travel like that was horrific for me, but I went. And I offered it all for the young priest, for his conversion, for his strength to be able to counter the horrible grip that the devil had on him in this disorder that he had. And also, I thought, that most of the time it seems to me that messages from on high have to do with the spiritual life and are spiritually intended and not usually the temporal, but sometimes the temporal. And so I thought, well, I will do the temporal. I will literally come to her in Fatima, which I did. And so that is over and done. And it was a beautiful experience, but nothing of another nature happened there that I could grasp other than I went. I saw, and I realized, though, that I probably could have stayed right here, but at least I let Mary know, and I told her, I will do anything for you, anything. So I hope I haven't offended anyone with the honesty with which I am speaking of certain matters. Truth is always truth, and I mentioned to someone who had sent a message, and I mentioned a private message back, that somehow this is sort of my swan song. I look upon this as my swan song of revealing things in a very outward way, but yet anonymously, without people knowing who I am or where I am. Maybe some who have been bothered by me in the past and went to great lengths to figure out where I was. None of it matters anymore. It's as if I'm being cut free, and none of it matters. Only the truth matters, and coming to an end of this aspect of my Catholic existence and being open to the rebirth of a new aspect of my Catholic existence, my spiritual journey. And Swan Song, I looked it up. It was a term used even as early as 3 BC. There was a legend that the mute swan never made any noises or sang until it was dying, and then it sang a beautiful, beautiful song. Well, of course, science has found out that swans do not sing when they're dying, and they do squawk or whatever, make noises all through their life. But it's a beautiful image that the last song we sing is beautiful. I do hope on my physical deathbed that my song will be maybe perhaps as Padre Pio, repeating Jesu Maria, Jesu Maria, or Consumata est, it is finished, or Lord, into thy hands I commend my spirit. Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. Something like that. God bless his real presence in you. May you have a beautiful Saturday.